The following is a special focus presentation.
We are now in the Garabandal era. Eyewitnesses of Garabandal were so inspired that it changed the course of their lives. What you are about to see could change the course of your life as well.
On a summer evening in June 1961, in the village of Garabandal, northern Spain, these four girls reported seeing a vision of an angel. During the following days, the angel came to them several times and said that the Virgin Mary would visit them. She had an important message and warnings for the world. These visions continued for 4 years. The girls learnt that if mankind did not change its ways and lead a holier life, then a dreadful chastisement would be unleashed. At the end of this winding road is the village of San Sebastian of Garabandal. In 1961, this was an isolated community of 80 homes and 300 inhabitants, who for centuries had led an unchanging existence. Laboring long hours in the fields and enduring harsh winters with few comforts. The parish priest, Father Valentin Marichalar, traveled on horseback from the neighboring town of Corcio on Sundays to hear confessions and to offer Holy Mass. The origins of the village are obscure. One thing that has marked it out has been its unwavering devotion to the Catholic faith. During the Spanish Civil War, priests on the run from revolutionary forces were sheltered by the villagers, and the Eucharist was carefully concealed in an abandoned house to avoid any possible desecration. Since medieval times, every evening at sunset, a bell has been rung to remind people to stop work and pray for the souls in purgatory. For the last 500 years, the Rosary and Litany devotions to the Virgin have been prayed every evening in this church of San Sebastian, the patron of the village. At 8:30 in the evening of Sunday, June the 18th, 1961, four friends were playing on this rocky path at the southern end of the village. They were Mari Cruz Gonzalez, aged 11, and three 12-year-old girls, Jacinta Gonzalez, Conchita Gonzalez, and Mari Loli Mazon. None of the girls were related, although three shared the same surname. Out of a clear evening sky, they heard a sound like thunder. Suddenly, Conchita fell on her knees, her head tilted back, startling the other three children. Thinking that she was ill, they were about to run to get her mother when the same thing happened to them. They saw a brilliant angel There was a sign beneath him, but the children were not able to read the words that were written on it. Over the next 12 days, the angel appeared to them several times. Then on July the 1st, he spoke to them for the first time, saying that he was Michael the Archangel, and that on the following day, Sunday, the Blessed Virgin would appear to them as Our Lady of Carmel, and would tell them the meaning of the words that were written on the sign. News spread quickly. Many priests were among the visitors who joined the villagers to witness the great event. The Blessed Virgin appeared. Michael the Archangel was on one side of her, and another angel who looked just like him was on the other side. Over the angel on the right, the children described what they thought was an eye, the eye of God. Our Lady explained to the girls the message written on the sign. It was her message for the world.
We must make many sacrifices, perform much penance, and visit the Blessed Sacrament frequently. But first, we must lead good lives. If we do not, a chastisement will befall us. The cup is already filling up, and if we do not change, a very great chastisement will come upon all humanity.
They spoke openly with the Heavenly Mother. This is a recording of Conchita praying the rosary during an apparition, slowly, as she had taught the girls to do. Over the next 4 years, she appeared more than 2,000 times, at all hours of the day and night, often appearing several times in quick succession. Sometimes she carried the infant Jesus in her arms. The girls' visions were preceded by 3 interior calls, which they described as 3 joys. On the 3rd call, they would run to meet our Blessed Mother and, crashing to their knees on the jagged rocks, would enter into a rapture. Their heads were thrown back, the pupils of their eyes dilated, and their faces serene. They were insensitive to pinpricks, burns, physical contact, or bright spotlights shone into their eyes. After one apparition, the back of Jacinta's legs were covered in pinpricks inflicted by a doctor. Pepe Diaz was the local builder and was among those who helped to protect the children.
I saw a doctor trying to lift Conchita off the ground during one of the apparitions. All he could do was to lift her onto her toes. She was already standing. Others tried, but no one could lift them. But the girls in ecstasy would lift each other up to kiss the Virgin, but we couldn't.
As the apparitions continued, new phenomena began to occur.
When the girls were in ecstasy, they were different. Sometimes they would walk so fast over the ground, we just couldn't keep up with them. They were too fast. They would go one way, then suddenly another. Often we were out of breath. Sometimes they were going so fast, we thought they were going to crash into the walls of the houses. We were perspiring so much. The girls were so cool. They showed no signs of perspiring. Often we were with the girls when they would just crash onto their knees on the rocky path. You could hear their knees striking the rocks, but they were never hurt.
The girls also began to make spectacular falls in their ecstasy. Sometimes they would fall straight backwards, stiff as a board, without using their hands to cushion the fall. And they would levitate.
And this day I saw Lolly in the floor, completely in the floor, and suddenly went up. And her father told me, take your stick and pass it through her. I took the stick and passed it. And she put her, when she was like this, she put her skirts down. I passed it through, and there was nothing. There was air down her. She was like this and with a face that I couldn't explain. She was beautiful.
Father Della Riva witnessed the girls' levitations and many other ecstasies. Above the village there's a bluff with 9 pine trees. Many of the apparitions took place in this area. One day I saw the children come off the hill, looking upwards like this, walking backwards. They came towards us through those bushes full of thorns, running like they were flying, backwards, like they had wings on their feet. They moved so fast that one couldn't see that their feet were not touching the ground, and they never fell. They passed us here, turned round, and walked off towards the church.
I saw them coming back from the pines, and nothing, and they never fall down, never. And they were going back, like this, and they walked, and they ran, they were there, and nothing happened to them. Never.
People would often place holy objects, such as rosaries, scapulars, medals, and wedding rings on a table. The girls would then offer these to Our Lady for her to kiss. Afterwards, the girls would always return the object to their rightful owners, even though they had no way of knowing to whom each object had belonged. The Virgin told the children, "Through my kiss on these objects, my son will perform miracles, wonders, and prodigies." This promise has been fulfilled in numerous reported spiritual and physical cures from around the world. To confirm the supernatural character of the events, St. Michael told Conchita that on a certain date, the invisible communion he'd been giving the girls would become visible on her tongue.
She fell to her knees here, prayed, and put out her tongue to receive communion. Her tongue remained bare. There was nothing there. I was only inches away from her face, then suddenly a host appeared on her tongue, just like you receive in communion. It was a beautiful white host. And suddenly the host started swelling up. It was moving. It was swelling. I can't remember now. It must have been 2 or 3 minutes it remained on her tongue. Then she closed her mouth and swallowed the host. The large crowd was packed around and pushing and shoving. Everyone wanted to see Conchita. Everybody wanted to take photographs. In their urgency to see, they ripped off my shirt. I was pushed onto the ground. I nearly lost my trousers. I managed to keep them up. The people were so excited. They were saying, "Miracle! Miracle!"
Of all the cameras there, only an 8mm movie camera caught the miracle on film.
And joining us now, an eyewitness to the apparitions in Garabandal, Maria Sirocco. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
I know you're not feeling well, so we're going to, just bear with us during this interview.
Well, actually, I don't feel too bad right now. It's
Okay.
my voice. That's the
Okay.
problem.
All right, you need to cough, go right ahead. Maria, you also run the St. Michael's Garabandal Center for Our Lady of Carmel in Pasadena, California.
That's right.
Because this is really, for you, this is a lifelong devotion, something that you feel that you've devoted your whole life to.
This
Spreading
is my
this
life.
message. It is your life.
It is my life. It's a second chance that God gave me because I spent too many years ignoring him. And Garabandal has brought the light of God into my life. And hopefully it can extend out to the others that I tried to contact.
Right.
And when I give slide lectures, that they too will receive the light and the grace to fulfill the message that our Blessed Mother came to this earth to give us.
Now, in our first interview, we talked about the background of Garabandal and how it began and some of the messages. It's been some 42 years since Garabandal occurred. Let's talk a little bit about what's been happening with the 4 children who were involved in this, the 4 children who say they saw the Blessed Mother and heard from her. Give us a rundown of what they're doing these days.
First of all 4 of them are married. The youngest, Mary Cruz, lives in Spain. She's a grandmother already.
Wow.
The other 3 live in the United States. Conchita, the oldest, lives in New York, and she too is a grandmother. Loli lives in Massachusetts, and Jacinta lives in California. And their children are not married as yet. But Loli right now is very, very ill, terminally ill.
With cancer or?
No.
No?
For the past 15, 16 years, she's had lupus.
Oh.
And then on the exact day of our Blessed Mother's first apparition, on July 2nd, she was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis in the final stages.
Oh, wow. Well, people would hear that and think, well, wait a minute, these kids were especially blessed to see the Blessed Mother. Why would that occur? Why would she have to go through this kind of suffering? Couldn't the Blessed Mother just reach down and say, look, let's ask Jesus to heal you?
Well, our Blessed Mother didn't promise that they were going to live a charmed life. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, she told Loli that out of the 4, she would have one trial after another for the rest of her life.
Why?
And this had to be offered for the sanctification of the priests. And I've known this girl since she was 16 years old, since I went there the first time on June 18, 1965, mm-hmm. when St. Michael appeared with Our Lady's final message. And I've known her very, very well. And I can tell you, her life would give the worst soap opera on television a run for their money, because she has had one trial after another.
And how does she deal with those? How does she shoulder all those crosses?
It's hard. In other words, there are also times when she says everything looks very dark. There's no light. Mm-hmm. Her faith is on the line.
So she's tempted to get angry as well, like everybody does.
I'm sure of that. And depressed. Uh-huh. And depressed. She not only has physical suffering, but she has mental anguish, terrible mental anguish. And thanks be to God, she has a wonderful husband who supports her in every way, and very strong in the faith. But no, I've seen the suffering. Let me finish. Let me tell you something, Mary Lou.
Okay.
When there's so much to tell you about what has happened in this girl's life, she's walking parallel, her suffering, like the church. You know, the Blessed Mother told these 4 girls in the beginning, the day would come when they would contradict each other and even deny that they had seen her. And they couldn't understand why. Why? When we're seeing you. Mm-hmm. And our Blessed Mother said, yes, it's going to be because you're going to pass through the same confusion as the church. What confusion? At that time, there was no confusion. Nobody understood these words. In 1961, when she said this, everything just looked wonderful. Lots of good, strong, holy vocations. But Our Lady singled out Loli and said, that she would have to offer all her sufferings for the sanctification of the priests.
And when you talk about this confusion, obviously there were people who denied, who didn't believe that she had actually seen the Blessed Mother, and that kind of stimulates that confusion even in their minds as well, because they don't get a lot of support then.
They first of all, they themselves doubt that they've seen the Blessed Mother, all
Why?
4 of them.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have no memory recollection.
Right, okay.
Sometimes things are clearer than others,
Right.
and they see things. But other times, it's very dark. And they have felt as though, I know Loli did, as though she was deceiving the whole world.
Right. How old were they when it happened?
12.
Each one was, no, one was,
Mary Cruz was 11.
okay.
But the point is this, and this is what the audience has to understand. The Blessed Mother came to Garabandal. Yes, she came as a mother, loving, sweet, tender, to show her concern for her children who had taken the wrong road. But she came as a teacher to remind us about the truth of our faith, because she knew that down the road, our faith was going to be on the line and even lose our faith. And because of that, now we start to live worse than the pagans. No, our Blessed Mother knew that, and she tried to prepare us. And she prepared us by allowing the children to lose their, it's as if a mystical veil
Right.
was pulled down, a shade.
She used them as an example as well.
As an example, because the way they were, not that they're not good people, they are very exemplary. Not that they did anything bad, but they were going to be confused like the church. It's the church that she's pointing
Right.
to. And you know,
Well, we've all been given something
you
very-
know
right.
the crisis that's in the church now with the priesthood.
Well, we've all been given something special, like they were given something special, and sometimes you forget it. You move on with the rest of your life, and then you get involved in things you shouldn't, and you forget the most important message from God. Now, Conchita, we have a clip, a phenomenal clip from a television show, a live television show from Ireland that was, I guess, taped 20 years ago. Maybe it was live. It's on tape now, but it was aired live 20 years ago in Ireland, and Conchita was on it. And it's very rare because they don't give interviews, still to this
No,
day,
they
correct?
still, they don't like to at all.
Well,
Not
this
at
is
all.
a very old tape, so
They
we are
ha-
going to
they
put
really
subtitles on this. But we
really,
don't,
yeah, really have to persist in getting them to open up and talk.
okay, well, we're going to roll that for the audience right
Okay.
now. We're going to put subtitles on it so that they can understand her more clearly. But I think it's really interesting. I think they'll really like that. Let's look at that now.
Okay.
Can I start first of all by asking you, you were all about 13 years of age when the apparition started. What did the Blessed Mother look like?
She looked beautiful. Her beauty gives us a lot of confidence the soon we see her.
And did she wear the same sort of clothes that we are normally accustomed to?
She had white dress and blue cape, but the dress is long.
Yes. What was the reaction of your parents at the time when you first started to talk about the apparitions?
The first day they don't believe, but after see us in ecstasy they believe.
And am I right in understanding, Conchita, that wherever the 4 of you were in Garabandal, in separate houses or out playing separately and so on, you got the call at the same time?
Yes. We had some kind of feelings inside. We call llamadas. But we are in different places. We are the calls in the same time.
And what was that feeling that you got?
We never can explain the feelings, but the feelings make us go into the place where the Blessed Mother wanted to see us, or she wanted we see her, to see her.
And that was a place called the Pines, is that right?
In different places. The first time we see her is the place is called La Calleja. There's sometimes in the Pines, in different places, in the front of the chair too.
And how many apparitions were there altogether during the two or 3 years?
I don't remember, but a lot of times.
A lot of times?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what did you talk about to her?
We talk about, the first time we talk about a lot of things, but when we see her, it gives us a lot of confidence. People give us messages, we give it to her. We say the rosary with her too.
And was there an angel with her at the beginning, or every time, or what?
The first time we had apparition is one angel. The first time we see her, the angel coming with her, then she coming all alone.
Now, the last apparition, she gave you a message, a full message.
Yes.
Yes, and she gave you this in Spanish.
Yes.
Would you say the message for me in Spanish?
Yes, I had writing here in English. I did want to write in English, but I think it's the more important thing, and all the apparitions in Garabandal. Do you like to read in English?
I would like to hear it in Spanish first.
Yes?
Yes.
I want to read in Spanish, but making me so nervous to talk in the cameras. Yeah. The message, the angel gave it to us, but the Blessed Mother tell him, give it to us. Como no se ha cumplido y no se ha hecho conocer al mundo mi mensaje el 18 de octubre, os diré que este es el último. Antes la copa se estaba llenando, ahora está rebosando. Los sacerdotes, obispos y cardenales van muchos por el camino de la perdición y con ellos llevan a muchas más almas. A la Eucaristía cada vez se le da menos importancia. Debéis evitar la ira de Dios sobre vosotros con vuestros esfuerzos. Si le pedís perdón con vuestras almas sinceras, Él os perdonará. Yo, vuestra madre, por intercesión del ángel San Miguel, os quiero decir que os enmendéis. Ya estáis en los últimos avisos. Os quiero mucho y no quiero vuestra condenación. Pedidnos sinceramente y nosotros lo daremos. Debéis sacrificaros más, pensad en la pasión de Jesús. This is the last message the Blessed Mother gave it to us.
Yes. Now, the meaning of that, broadly speaking, in shortened form, that message is what in English?
That she said, the sacrifice, the penance. She said, with the more and more we don't have no respect to the Holy Eucharist. And then he said, pray for the priest, bishops, and cardinals, but they go to the wrong way, and they bring a lot of salt with them. And they say to think a lot in the Passion of Jesus. Ask to Jesus forgiveness with sincere heart, but he want to forgive us.
Now, what will the miracle eventually be?
The Blessed Mother say one miracle going to happen, but only I can say 8 days before.
You will say what 8 days before?
The day of the miracle.
You will actually nominate the day?
Yes.
Now, is it true that it will be in April or May?
I say going to happen between April and June, between the months.
Yes. And you will announce that 8 days
8 days before.
Why cannot you tell us now?
But she say 8 days before. I don't know why.
That is what the Blessed Mother said?
Yes.
Yes. Did the other 3 girls get this message as well?
No, they don't know about the miracle. They don't know about the day of the miracle.
No, but you do.
Yes, I do.
Is it soon?
Yes.
It is soon?
Yes.
Is it years or months?
I can say only 8 days before.
Yes. And will there be a warning before you give the message, or is the warning at about the same time?
No, the Blessed Mother say before the miracle is one warning is coming to the whole world. There's something going to happen in the whole world. And, they gonna know, everybody gonna know it's coming from God.
Yes. No matter where we are.
Yes. Yeah. It don't have nothing to do with Garabandal, but it's something going to happen, like prepare ourselves to the miracle, to see the miracle.
Yes. Do you recall, Conchita, at any stage what your feelings were during that trance?
What is the feelings I feel? When I see her, it's like she takes us from the air. You know, she takes us from here. We feel so happy to see her. Like we don't ever want to see her, you know, leave her.
Yeah.
It's beautiful feelings, but it's very hard to explain the feelings to be with her.
Your feelings about the world now, Conchita, do you find the world a depressing place to be, or what?
I feel like the place to be, the world to me is the place to prepare ourselves to go to heaven.
And how do you do that?
I try to do what I can sometimes. You know, listen the pulpit, do what the Blessed Mother messages.
And are your family religious? Your own daughters and sons?
Yeah, I think they are very religious. Yeah, they like to go to church, to say the rosary.
Mm-hmm. Do your neighbors know who you are?
No, nobody knows.
Nobody?
Nobody. My pastors don't know, and nobody in my church.
And why do you not want more publicity for the cause of Garabandal?
But for the cause of Garabandal, I don't, you know, I love to everybody know about the message, but I don't want anybody to know it's me. I don't know why. Maybe for my children, they go to school, I don't want to.
Do the children know?
No, today they asked me, why you going to be on TV? I said, I don't know.
You said you don't know?
Yeah.
And where are they?
They are outside.
They are here with you?
Yes.
The three older ones are here?
Yes.
Yes. And well, they know after this, surely.
I don't know, I tell them pray for me.
and if they don't know that you were one of the ones who was involved in Garabandal, but they do know about Garabandal, they have heard about it, surely.
I don't know, but in my house we never talk about Garabandal. I had a holy hour in my house. We never talk about Garabandal there. And around me, we never talk about that. For this, maybe they never hear it.
And the other three girls are in America. Do you make any contact with the other three girls?
I talked to one, Jacinta, in California, but we never talk about Garabandal either.
This is extraordinary that you're trying to, you're not trying to forget about it, but you are trying to leave it to one side in your life.
This happened now. Before, without. After the apparitions finished, to me, I think it's nothing is true. I think after that, I better don't talk about. It's a big difference between without before. Before, without, we love to talk about the apparitions.
Yes.
Now it's hard to do it.
Yes. Now, you also speak about the chastisement. Do you understand that word?
Yes.
Yes. When is that due to happen?
The Blessed Mother said if we don't change, the chastisement is coming, but it's not sure it's coming. But if we change, she don't sing to us.
Yes, yes. Conchita, ladies and gentlemen.
You know, Maria, when I look at that, what sticks out in my mind the most is when she says, that was 20 years ago, I don't know what's happened since, that her children knew nothing about what happened to her when she was young. The people in her area, in her church, knew nothing about it. That shows
she still says her children didn't know anything.
I mean, there's a humility in that as well, but I guess there's also a protective factor. But as the host asked, you would wonder, don't you want to go out to the streets and scream this message because you know of some of the horrible things that might occur in the world and that it's important that you put your own desires and your fears aside for that? How do you respond to that? Because that's what I'd be wondering.
No, because she really doesn't have any recollection. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a person with amnesia, I mean, all the people in the world aren't going to convince you to do something if you can't remember it.
Right.
They know what the people saw. They remember what they said, but they don't remember what they saw.
And she remembered bits and pieces. For example, she said that part of the message was that the priests would lead souls astray, basically.
That wasn't her message. That was the Blessed Mother's message.
Right, the Blessed Mother's message to her.
On June the 18th, 1965, at about 11:30 at night, Conchita received the last message. It was filmed by Spanish television.
As my message of October the 18th has not been complied with and has not been made much known to the world, I am advising you that this is the last one. Before, the cup was filling up. Now it is flowing over. Many cardinals, bishops, and priests are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Eucharist. You should turn the wrath of God away from yourselves by your efforts. If you ask His forgiveness with sincere hearts, He will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of Saint Michael the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. You are now receiving the last warnings. I love you very much and do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity, and we will grant your requests. You should make more sacrifices. Think about the passion of Jesus.
That's a very powerful message. So
Right.
she remembered some important things.
Yeah. Well, she knows the message, all right. They know the message. All four of them know the message. There's no problem with that. It's what they're not remembering is seeing the Blessed Mother.
Mm-hmm.
If they describe her, they're only describing her the way they described her at that time, because they can't remember how she looked. If you would have asked them today, there is no way that they remember. What they're remembering is what they said at the time.
Well, so you said even today her children do not know, 20 years after that interview,
Well, last time I talked to her was, I met her at Fatima, and no, just a couple of years ago.
Well, what about the other kids? Do their families know about this, or their community?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
They've chosen to speak about it.
They know.
What's
They
the
all know.
difference? What's the difference? Why?
Well, Conchita, like you said before, she didn't want her children to be influenced in any way by this, and wanted to protect them from the public eye as well. And she was a lot more visible than the other three children because she made herself visible. And she was well known in the area. Although, I will tell you one thing, she never uses the name Conchita.
Right.
So she keeps that hidden. I remember when she moved out of one area in New York into this place where she's living now, which is by the seashore. And it's a very, very tiny community. I'm not going to say where. But anyhow, she went to the church, and the pastor there didn't know who she was. And she had this beautiful picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe, full size, that she had in her other house, but she had no room in this house to put it anywhere. And so when she went to this church, she thought, wow, that wall over there looks like it would be nice if it were hanging there. And she asked the priest if he would like to have it. And he said, yeah, not knowing who she was.
Right.
And she invited him to come over for a Spanish meal. She was going to cook. So he went over to her house and everything, and she cooked a nice meal. And they got along great. And next thing you know, he contacts her because he's having a crowd over in the rectory and nobody to prepare a meal. And he wanted to know if she would come and prepare this meal. And so she would be going over to the rectory and doing this and going over there more and more. He never knew who she was.
But you know what's...
Her pastor.
I know. But what I noticed as well, though, in her small interview there, even though she doesn't remember a lot about it, she's obviously a holy woman. She said she has a holy hour in her home. Her children go to church and they enjoy it. So she has passed on that message to her family, which is very critical, you know, living the message yourself as well as your family.
She used to have a holy hour to pray for priests in her home where she lived before, but not in this place. Now she goes somewhere for a holy hour. In that parish that she was at in the first place, she couldn't get it in the church. Priest wouldn't allow it. And they used to come over, I forget if it was first Friday of the month. Not first Friday, every Friday of the month. But on the first Friday, she said, no, you don't come here, you go to the church and make your holy hour over there. And if anyone ever walked through the door and decided that they would like to ask her a question about the apparitions, she'd show them the door. Please leave.
Please leave.
You come here to pray. You don't come here to talk about the apparitions.
Because that's the message, to pray. She was also given a veil that belonged to Padre Pio.
The veil, the first veil, excuse me, The first veil that covered the face of Padre Pio when he was waked, when he was in his coffin, was given to her, yes. It was given because of Padre Pio had this message for her, and the idea was when he died, she was in a state of shock like the rest of the world, because they thought he was going to be alive to see the big miracle.
Right.
But Our Lady said he would see the miracle from wherever he was at. And so would the reigning Pope would see the miracle from wherever he was at. So would Padre Pio. Those are the exact words. And when Padre Pio died, everybody said, wow, that's the end of Garabandal. Miracle didn't happen. Well, when the priest sent word for her to meet him at Lourdes, because he had a message from Padre Pio, who was now already dead, he presented her with this veil. And first thing Conchita wanted to know, how come he died when the Blessed Mother told me he was going to see the miracle? And he said he did see the miracle before he died. And there was no way that they would have sent the veil to Conchita, given her this veil, if they thought she was a fake or a fraud.
Right. Let's talk now about what is occurring in the world today and how it relates to what took place in Garabandal 42 years ago as we sit here in 2003. It was a message about the church and some of the problems within the church. It was a message about the world. And now here we are standing at the possible brink of war. And how does that relate? How does what's happening in our world today, let's talk about the war part first, relate to the message of Garabandal?
Well, for it to relate to Garabandal, we have to go back further. We have to go back to La Salette, Lourdes, and Fatima. Fatima, our Blessed Mother, laid everything on the line for us. She told us step by step everything that was going to happen if we didn't do what she came to this earth to tell us to do, to help us. Pray the rosary every day, the first Saturdays of the month, for the conversion of Russia. If we didn't change our lives, pray for poor sinners who had no one to pray for them, who were falling into hell. Well, if we didn't do all these things, what did she say? A worse and more terrible war would come. It did come. World War II, 30 million people dead. We didn't listen to her at all. But what I want to say is, it's not over, because she said if we didn't do all these things, there would be terrible persecutions of the church. The good would be martyred, and the Holy Father would have much to suffer. And certain nations would be annihilated. Is that what we're waiting for?
Are we talking about the U.S.? Do we know specifics?
Certain nations. She didn't name those nations. But we know how it's going to end, because she said, in the end, not in the middle, not 3/4 of the way, in the end, Russia will be converted, and my Immaculate Heart will triumph, and there will be a certain amount of peace granted to the world. We're walking a perilous path right now, right now.
Are you scared to death about the possibility of us engaging in a war?
Terrible.
You're terrified? Does that terrify you?
Terrible. But I know it's still, even though it's so terrifying, I still have a lot of hope. A lot of hope.
Hope in what?
In being able to reach enough of people to tell them about this so that they can turn their lives around. Let me tell you, Mary Lou, there have been a lot of people who were away from the church that have come back to the church.
You know, you mentioned that so many people have come back to their faith.
They've left the life of sin,
right,
and they've turned their lives around and come back to God.
But unfortunately, with this pedophile situation, people who would never have thought of leaving their faith, even those who have not been personally traumatized by sexual abuse by a priest or a nun, those people are so angry at the way they perceive the church has handled it that they're leaving and they're falling out and they're not giving money like they used to. What do you say to them? Because that's a very serious situation too. They feel wounded to a degree.
This is my newspaper, The Vigil, the Message of Garabandal. And it's a recent issue. And I deal with
those are the 4 children there.
Those are the 4 children. And I deal with that question that you've just asked me. How do you deal with it? First of all, you have to remember the church is run by human beings. That's number one. Maybe we should say number one should be what the Blessed Mother said at Garabandal. In her final message, many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the path of perdition and are taking many souls with them. Nobody understood this. How could the Blessed Mother say such a thing? I mean, for me personally, it was hard to believe.
Sure.
But as time went on, I understood that what she said, she never lies. Those words were very prophetic indeed. But first of all, we have to understand who established the church. It was established by Jesus Christ himself when he was here on earth. He gave us the church, the sacraments, especially the sacrament of reconciliation, and the Eucharist, his own body and blood. That's number one. You have to remember that. Now, these priests have a very unique vocation because they are the only ones that can give us the body and blood of Christ during the holy sacrifice of the Mass. They're the only ones. Nobody else can do that. Not even a deacon. Nobody. No extraordinary minister. Nobody. They're the only ones that can consecrate. Even the angels can't consecrate. You know, Michael the Archangel brought communion to the children often in Garabandal.
So the attack against them is going to be greater.
Greater because the devil knows that because the priest is the only one that can give us the body and blood of Christ, he has to destroy the priesthood. When I was in Czechoslovakia, I hate to think about this, I almost hate to repeat it, but when I was in Czechoslovakia, I remember someone telling me, I'm not going to say who, that there had been a mystic years ago that had said the devil had one aim, and that was to line the walls of hell with the vestments of the priest. Because without the priest, there is no blessed sacrament. And Jesus said, unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you cannot have life in you. So, first of all, the priesthood is what the devil is focusing in on here. And our job is to correct the problem that the world is facing. And how do we do it? We don't do it by throwing sticks and stones at the priests. And I feel as though right now what we need to do is we need to pray for the priests more than ever. This is what the Blessed Mother told Loli. So what do you tell these people? Stop throwing sticks and stones and get down on your knees in front of the Blessed Sacrament and pray. Pray for holy priests.
Because sometimes in a crisis like this, the laity forget that the church is the laity as well, and the priests are our leaders, but we have to reach down and have some compassion, and instead of dumping the church and saying, well, I'm not going there anymore, it's destroyed my faith, you have to support the essence of the church that was based on Jesus Christ.
Where are you going to go that you're going to get the
And that's what the
sacraments?
devil would like to see, too.
Absolutely.
That's the domino effect. Get the priest first, then the kids and the adults and the rest of the laity.
Absolutely. Look.
But it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people to do that because they've revered these people and they've probably looked at them in a godlike fashion, which they shouldn't have done.
I did.
To begin with, you know.
I did. To me, that's the way
that
I was
in their
raised.
humanity they can be sinful as well, but you know, God can heal all those sins and all those wounds.
During the time of the apparitions, and it's on film too, Loli cried a lot. Tears would be coming down.
Sure.
A lot. And her mother would want to know, and her father wanted to know, why were you crying for the priest? Her mother didn't want to hear it. She thought it was blasphemy.
Right.
But yet her mother did pray for the priest.
Well, a lot of people didn't want to hear that it was going on when these people were complaining.
Yes, but Loli knew what was coming. She was told what was coming. That's the reason why she's suffering. And she asked Our Lady, even though the doctors haven't given her much time to live, she asked the Blessed Mother at the time of the apparitions, am I going to die soon? And Our Lady said, no, you have to remain on earth to suffer for the priests. That's what she's suffering for.
That was a heavy cross.
A heavy cross.
Yeah.
She can't see it clearly at times, but her greatest cross is not just physical, it's mental anguish, doubts about the faith, feeling abandoned by God. I mean, she's actually gone through, I've seen it, I'm a witness to this. I've seen her go through these experiences that great saints have gone through. But I want to get back to the apparitions once again. I want to talk about Father Lewis, the young priest who died of joy, because we have to relate that to the crisis in the church today.
The night of August the 8th, 1961, while observing the girls in ecstasy, Father Luis cried out 4 times, "Miracle, miracle, miracle, miracle." Maximina Gonzalez is Conchita's aunt and a confidant of the visionary. She remembered Father Andrew very well.
What a beautiful Mass, he said, the last day he was in the village. After this Mass, Marie Cruz came into the church in ecstasy. A large crowd followed her. They were very noisy. He was trying to listen to her conversation. He was kneeling next to her, in front of the statue of Our Lady of the Rosary. Later that night, they climbed to the pines, and Father followed. All of a sudden, Father put his arms in the air and shouted, "Miracle, miracle, miracle, miracle." Later, I asked my niece Conchita what had happened, and she said, all of the time they were seeing the vision, they were seeing Father Andreu. Normally they saw no one. They did not see any miracle. They only saw the Blessed Mother. Our Lady told the girls that Father Andreu saw the future miracle. Later he left the village with friends.
On the drive home that night and into the next morning, he told the driver and other friends with him, "What a beautiful present the Virgin has given me. Oh, what a sweet and lovely mother we have in heaven. Today is the happiest day in my life." Without ever being ill, he made a coughing sound, he lowered his head and died. The explanation arrived at was that he had died of intense joy.
But what I want to say is, why was he singled out? Why did the Blessed Mother single out this priest?
The death of my brother was also a kind of mystery for me, because he was not really sick. The sickness they may have is that anybody else they may have, sometimes flu or things like that. And then his death was a surprise for everybody. I asked some of doctors, friends of mine, and then they say, I don't know. We don't know. Well, of course, heart arrest, that's what they decided. Everybody dies of that, from that. And my brother, of course, he was a heart arrest, that's the death. But really, it was really impressive, not just for me, but for everybody, because he was speaking normally and plenty of joy, and then in a matter of 1 minute, he passed away. I believe that my brother was really happy at the moment of his death.
His last words were, "This is the happiest day of my life."